Aemond!
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 4 just released. This will be my full breakdown and Easter eggs video. There's so much to talk about. For anyone wondering when we'd actually finally see some huge dragon battles without them skipping past the actual fighting itself, like we saw in previous episodes, this episode totally cooked in a bunch of different ways. Seriously though, RIP to the Fallen, and somebody teach Aemond how to control his dragon in an actual fight. There's so much to talk about, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. The actual episode title was The Red Dragon and the Gold, a reference to Meleys and Sunfyre, who both came out the losers during this fight. It's also a reference to the different banners of the different sides, like the red Targaryen banner for Rhaenyra's side and the gold Targaryen sigil for Aegon's side. And it's a reference to the actual Dance of the Dragons. Both the book that this is adapting from, Fire and Blood, uses the term A Dance of Dragons when referring to the Targaryen Civil War, the Dance of the Dragons, the Blacks versus the Greens. They also use that title during the original series too. And it's also a reference to the literal dragon battle during the episode, with them all fighting in the sky between Rhaenys on Meleys, Aemond on Vhagar, and Aegon on Sunfyre. When they first announced they were making House of the Dragon a couple years ago, the big selling point HBO used at the time was showing actual dragon battles with a ton of dragons. Compared to the original Game of Thrones series, where the closest we got to actual dragon battles was Daenerys and Jon Snow riding her remaining dragons fighting the Night King on the white version of Viserion. And even that only lasted for like a hot second and was in pitch black night, so you really didn't get that much of an actual dragon battle. This time we finally got it, and it was glorious in the most WTF kind of way, like in a bad kind of way. Everyone press F to pay respects for Rhaenys. This episode just aired as she was also having her birthday within universe too, so very tragic moment. Also RIP to her dragon Meleys, and any chance that Aegon was ever going to have it ever being happy again. We should also say an RIP for that beautiful suit of Valyrian armor and Aegon the Conqueror's crown that he was both wearing. It was Aegon the Conqueror's suit of Valyrian armor from ancient Valyria. Together, all those different pieces were worth more than the value of a castle, and now they're just molten slag. If you remember, one of the big problems that they have in present day is that all the people that know how to create Valyrian steel are dead. The secret has been lost. They can reshape it so they can create other things from that molten slag. But we'll see how they follow up with that in future episodes. A lot of people asking about this in previous videos too. This episode is meant to show you that Targaryens can be burned. Pretty much all of them can be burned. Daenerys is the only exception to that because magic was in play, according to George R. Martin. Surprisingly, there are no new scenes in the intro woven into the tapestry. I think because they're saving for next week in the aftermath of Rook's Rest, they'll show the events of Rook's Rest in next week's intro. The actual opening scene starts with Daemon having another vision at Harrenhal. We get a lot of crazy Harrenhal backstory during this. It's all really cool lore. This time he's entering the Iron Throne room and he sees young Rhaenyra, but in old Rhaenyra's clothing with Viserys' crown on her head. When she's saying he created her and then is set on destroying her, this is his conscience speaking to him. He's reckoning with the way he's treated Rhaenyra, his role in all this, all of his actions these years, his guilt over the succession, his jealousy. Notice he beheads her right after this with Dark Sister, the same way he did with Corlys Velaryon's brother in the Iron Throne room during Season 1. Fulfilling her statement, he does kind of mean her harm, and the head continues to speak, saying this is what he always wanted. So he's sort of reckoning with that, and he talks to Alys Rivers about what's going on here, why he's having the visions, so I'll explain that in a second. Because a big part of that is tied up in the magic of the Children of the Forest and the fact that Harrenhal is built on the bones of an old Weirwood forest that was cut down. But as you can see, the Weirwoods have started to grow back up. The roots are growing back through Harrenhal now, slowly reclaiming the forest from Harrenhal. Daemon has literally been sleeping in a bed made from a cut-down Weirwood tree, so of course he's going to have really spooky visions. One of the other cool details here too, during the vision, you actually get a much better overhead shot of all the melted swords around the Iron Throne. Like, it's not just the Iron Throne itself, there are melted swords all around it. The reason why those aren't there in present day during the events of the main Game of Thrones series is mostly because the production design has evolved since those early seasons of the original show. But in the context of the world, the way they wanted to say it is that after Robert's Rebellion, Robert Baratheon had a lot of the Targaryen things from the Red Keep taken out, so they basically slimmed down the Iron Throne when he became king. He's woken in his room by Simon Strong. Notice there's blood on his hand. That's probably from grasping his sword. There's been a raven from Dragonstone basically explaining what Criston Cole and the Green Army are doing right now, just marching across the eastern side of Westeros. He explains Rosby and Stokeworth have both already bent the knee to Criston Cole, and it's because of the events of Blood and Cheese, which is exactly what Rhaenyra told Daemon that she was worried about in the aftermath of Blood and Cheese. Like, this is what's going to happen now, people will turn against me. And essentially, they had supported Rhaenyra before this. When they pass the goat that's just eating randomly inside Harrenhal's bones, I think that's meant to foreshadow the Green Council also saying that over in the Crownlands, they're running short on livestock because the dragons are eating so many of them. All those dragons get really hungry, and we're going to get a bunch more dragons really soon too. Daemon meets with the very young Oscar Tully, Lord Grover Tully's young son. I've talked about this in the past, but there are a bunch of different Game of Thrones characters that George R. R. Martin named after Sesame Street characters. Like there's a Kermit Tully, there's an Elmo Tully, so it's generally just meant to be a big joke on his part. Both of the sides, the blacks and the greens, make jokes about the chaos that's happening in the Riverlands with everybody kind of doing their own thing while the Liege Lord, the Lord of Riverrun, is on his deathbed. If he did have the Liege Lord with him, it'd be much easier for him to raise an army, call the Bannermen to him. When Oscar Tully basically says that he's not going to be any help, Daemon pulls a Thanos, saying that he'll do it himself, and calls the Blackwoods to them. They're the house during the Burning Mill episode who had already declared for Rhaenyra. Rhaenys then meets with Alan Hull at the shipyards here on Driftmark. She already knew that he was Corlys's bastard, but she'd never seen him before in person. There are a couple awkward conversations she has with Corlys about this later, like she knows exactly what's going on here. That's why she grabs his face and says his mother must have been very beautiful, beautiful enough to make Corlys forget his marriage vows to Rhaenys. Fun fact too, he got married to Rhaenys when Rhaenys was only 16 years old. He says it in so many words, but Corlys also knows that that's his bastard. Like, you didn't tell me he was the one that saved your life, of all people. And when she says that he should be treated with the respect that he's due as a bastard of Corlys, they're trying to lay the seeds for Corlys selecting him as the next heir of Driftmark. He could do that by legitimizing Alan here. Remember, his brother Adam is also one of the dragon riders too, so he's also important, but for a completely different part of the story. When she tells him that Rhaenyra is away from Dragonstone, Baela wants her help with the Black Council, that's because a lot of this has been happening while she was on her little side trip to meet Alicent in the Sept. I was kind of wondering the way they would explain Rhaenyra not going to Rook's Rest. There were a couple surprises with that storyline. We'll talk about that in a second. Back in the Red Keep, notice how Alicent is holding the little model of Balerion the Black Dread from Viserys' model of the Valyrian Freehold. R.I.P. to that giant Lego model that Aegon smashed. This is the model of Balerion the Black Dread that he gave to her when she was a young girl before they got married, when he was explaining the actual model itself. Her dropping and breaking it is meant to foreshadow the events of Rook's Rest with the dragons falling out of the sky. Both Aegon and his dragon, and also Rhaenys and her dragon Meleys. When the Grand Maester shows up with the potion, it's moon tea that she's taking because she doesn't want to get pregnant with Criston Cole's child. It sounds like she's been mainlining moon tea for a while now since they've been getting it on after Viserys' death. Notice she asks him if Viserys ever spoke to him specifically about Aegon succeeding him as king. She's also been reading a bunch of books of Targaryen history, and later in the episode, she's seen in Viserys' old apartments, like the king's chambers basically that Aegon lives in now, looking for more Targaryen history. Because even though when she was talking to Rhaenyra saying that it's too late, it doesn't matter about Aegon's prophecy, she actually did take genuine interest in it and wants to learn more about Aegon the Conqueror and him conquering the Seven Kingdoms and the circumstances of the prophecy. So now that Alicent feels like she's not really wanted at the small council meetings anymore, she's become the historian, mostly on Aegon the Conqueror. Over on Dragonstone, the Black Council sort of spins its wheels until Rhaenyra comes back later in the episode, everybody arguing about her being absent, then not having a clear figurehead, a clear leader. I think this is mostly to give Rhaenys the idea that she needs to be the one to step up later in the episode when they do need a dragon to go to Rook's Rest. The other important detail here too is they remind you that nobody on the Black Council also knows about Rhaenyra's secret trip to King's Landing. She didn't tell anybody. That was a big deal in last week's episode. Then we see the Green Army sacking Duskendale after it's done, like they speed past it just like they did with Burning Mill. In the books, the reason why they were able to sack it so easily is because they weren't prepared, and because the two earlier houses bent the knee. Their force had grown so large, it was just very easy for them when they showed up to Duskendale. R.I.P. to Lord Darkland. Notice how he's correct when he says that Criston Cole isn't fit for the White Cloak of the Kingsguard. We've seen everything he's been getting up to. There's no way that he has been obeying any of those rules. He also prophesied Criston Cole's death, saying that this will come for him in kind, eventually, but it's going to be a little while before that happens. He gets a raven. We find out later that it's from Aemond, and it's all about them laying a trap at Rook's Rest, hoping that Rhaenyra is going to be the one to show up because they really want to kill Rhaenyra. That's why he looks so smug for the rest of the episode until Rook's Rest, because he's got this secret plan that nobody else knows about. There are a couple awkward moments at the Green Council meeting too, where Aegon is learning about this on the fly, like, wait a minute, you had a whole plan, you didn't tell me what's going on with Rook's Rest, I thought we wanted Harrenhal. Larys Strong also makes a joke about being a cripple, talking about the state of the castle itself, like the castle is more crippled than me, a big cripple, and how difficult it's going to be for Daemon to do anything of value there, because even though Larys Strong lost the castle to him, he controls all the coin, and you need coin to raise an army. So the idea is that Daemon's going to have to use Caraxes in the threat of being burned by a dragon to try and raise that army. Like, he doesn't have any money, but is like, you can either join me or I can burn you. Aemond then explains their plan to take Rook's Rest. He doesn't tell them the entire plan because he doesn't want Aegon to show up either, so I think he's trying to avoid saying as much as he can about the actual plan itself. But you notice how the Green Council defers more to Aemond, like they want to work with Aemond more than Aegon. Nobody really wants Aegon there. You also notice here when they start speaking High Valyrian to each other, Aemond makes fun of him for being an idiot, and Aegon also is not very great at speaking High Valyrian, like he didn't pay attention during those lessons when he was growing up. Alicent skips the Green Council meeting because of the side effects from the moon tea is affecting her gut. Larys Strong also clocks that, but he probably knew what was going on with her and Criston Cole the whole time. Notice how he was lurking on them in the background of the courtyard in last week's episode too. So I think Larys Strong is just messing with her here, like he knows everything that's going on. Notice how he also says you should embrace sinful desires, like he starts talking about pleasure, embracing that. That's meant to be a nod to all the weird foot stuff he's been making her do all these years as he moves slowly towards the couch where she sat when they were doing all the weird foot stuff. She essentially tells him in so many words that she doesn't really care about Criston Cole anymore, like he seems like he's trying to suss out the way she actually feels about him. They have a longer talk about how she feels like everything has gone to crap, it's only going to get worse, there's nothing left that they can do to stop it. And also, he notices that she's been reading the Targaryen histories. It's all because Rhaenyra said the prophecy of Aegon the Conqueror. She's been trying to learn up on the last long night, the White Walkers, all that stuff. And when he starts talking about the succession and what Viserys' true intentions were, I think the idea is that Larys Strong knows the truth of what Viserys actually said, that he was talking about Aegon the Conqueror and not Aegon II. Either because he knew way back when it originally happened, because he knows everything that happens in the Red Keep, he's the Master of Whispers, or he knew what Rhaenyra told her inside the Sept. It just seems like at some point he learned the actual truth, but here's the thing, he would still support the Greens overthrowing Rhaenyra or usurping Rhaenyra, so even if he did know the truth back when they originally crowned Aegon II, I don't think that he would have tried to stop it, like he would have just continued to try and help them. Remember, he killed his entire family, so he'd have no problem helping the Greens usurp Rhaenyra. Daemon then starts having more visions, hearing things, boots marching, shouting, that's probably to the army foretelling what's going to be happening the next couple of episodes. Then he sees a person turning around and it's Aemond with his one eye, but it's Daemon's face underneath the eye patch. That's probably meant to foreshadow his eventual battle with Aemond at the God's Eye near Harrenhal, but that probably won't happen till like season 4, so essentially Daemon is seeing his own future. It's also meant to be connected to what Alys Rivers said to him in last week's episode, saying that he was going to die in this place. Then he enters one of the kitchens and sees Alys Rivers preparing a potion for him to help him sleep. Notice all the frog sounds during their conversation. I think that's meant to be a sly reference to Maggie the frog in the prophecy that she gave to Cersei about her own death. Basically, this entire conversation is Alys Rivers just messing with Daemon. She explains a little bit of her backstory. She said that she inherited the duties of the previous maester at Harrenhal after the last one fled in the night, probably because they were also getting visions like Daemon is and just completely freaked them out. In the context of the books, they also say that Alys Rivers was a wet nurse working at Harrenhal as well. When she says that sleep can be thin at Harrenhal, it's very clear that she knows exactly what's happening to Daemon, and it happens to everybody there, as she starts talking about the lore and the history behind the castle itself. It's a real big info dump. It's really cool if you're into a lot of book lore like that. So when she's saying sleep can be thin in Harrenhal, that's a reference to it being a special place that's strong in magic just in general, like one of the special places around the world that are just particularly stronger in magic than others. Melisandre has a similar conversation with Jon Snow when she and him are passing underneath the wall, and she talks about the magic that was used to make the wall itself, like very, very powerful magic. She calls it one of the hinges of the world. Harrenhal is also a place like that because of the circumstances surrounding Harrenhal building Harrenhal itself. She explains part of it, like she says that he cut down a weirwood forest to build the castle, which is kind of like building your castle on a cursed burial ground, like Pet Cemetery style. Like, where is the worst, most cursed place you could possibly build a castle? Why don't we cut down this really magical forest and put it on top of that? There's also the idea that there is blood in the mortar of Harrenhal itself. So Harrenhal used a bunch of slave labor in the Riverlands to actually build the castle. It took 40 years to do, and he mixed a lot of the blood of those workers into the mortar that was used to actually build the castle. So there is literally blood in the castle walls. But like I said, this is also one of the reasons why the weirwood roots are growing through the castle, because the weirwood forest is slowly reclaiming the area from the castle itself. And that's what she means when she says the curse started when the first stone was laid, the curse of Harrenhal. The whispers she speaks of, because of the heart trees, the weirwoods that are still heard, are the children of the forest. Remember, this is also right next to the God's Eye, one of the most magical places in all of Westeros, which was critical during the Children of the Forest's first war with the First Men. So it'd also be like building your castle near the center of all magic in Westeros. Also not a great idea to make a bed and have someone sleep in it that's made from weirwood trees. Like, do you want to have crazy visions? Great, yeah, sleep in that weirwood bed. When she says she's a barn owl cursed to live in human form, that's a warging reference, but I don't think that she's meant to be an actual warg in the context of the story. Daemon calls her a witch. The books do call her the Witch of Harrenhal. I think the idea is that she probably just worships the old god, and she's kind of like Maggie the Frog, in that she understands a lot of the history and the lore and all this stuff that's happening here. She gives him a sleeping potion, and the way they transition to the next day, I love the way they do this transition. They make it seem like it knocked him out so cold that he has no idea when yesterday ends and tomorrow began, so he just wakes up in the middle of his meeting. We find out this is Willem Blackwood. That's the little boy from Season 1 who killed the Bracken boy during Rhaenyra's courtship. He mentions Benjicott Blackwood. That's Bloody Ben from the books that a lot of people thought were going to be on the show. We didn't see him during last week's episode, though. Bloody Ben becomes the next Lord of House Blackwood after his father was killed at that Burning Mill battle. He references the oath everyone swore to Rhaenyra during Season 1. Daemon references the historical feud that the Brackens and them had going back more than 1,000 years to the Age of Heroes. But the thing is the show has compressed the timeline, so 1,000 years ago is when the first Long Night happened on the show. In the books, it's more like 10,000 years. Daemon starts having more waking visions, this time of Laena, his second dead wife from Season 1, Baela and Rhaena's mother. And if it wasn't clear, the Blackwood's condition for helping Daemon, giving him his army, was to get him to burn the Brackens down with Caraxes, or at least threaten to burn them down. Speaking of burning things to the ground, we also get the Green Council talking about how dragons have been eating all the livestock in the Crownlands. Tywin Lannister also clocks that the treasury is exhausted, so the Greens are basically broke, like the crown is basically broke. That's going to be a big problem. Remember, there's been a blockade of King's Landing for a while now, so there's like no money now, and they have no food coming in either. Better hope that there's a bunch of food coming from Highgarden. Aegon bails on them. Notice how they don't break a step, they just continue their meeting like they were just waiting for him to bail. Like, please get out of here so we can actually have our real meeting. And even though Alicent makes fun of him here a little bit, telling him what a disappointment he is, that's basically what this conversation is, telling him that he is useless and to just sit there and do nothing and not get in everyone's way. To his credit, he says that he just got rid of Viserys' Targaryen history books, Valyrian history books. He didn't have them burned, so they're still around somewhere. Maybe he had them sent to the Maesters in the Citadel. Notice while he's saying that too, they also show a close-up shot of the Valyrian dagger on his hip. That also becomes a big thing later in the episode too, when Aemond finds it in the wreckage. Like I said earlier, the reason why Alicent is kind of laughing, joking at him here is because the Green Council didn't want her there either, so they didn't want either one of them, so they're kind of in the same boat now. So here's the thing, when Alicent tells him that he's kind of worthless and just sit there and do nothing like he's expected to do, this might be what Helena was forgiving her for in advance in last week's episode when she said, "I forgive you, mother." We all thought it might be for what she did with Criston Cole, but it might be because Alicent pushed Aegon to go to Rook's Rest and ultimately get injured, so she's kind of to blame for making that happen. Then at Rook's Rest, the reason why Criston Cole is so smug with Gawain Hightower is because he has that secret plan with Aemond, and Vhagar is just waiting in the wings to show up and ambush whoever shows up. They're hoping Rhaenyra shows up on Syrax, but they're just hoping at least one dragon does show up. So that's why when Rhaenys and Meleys show up and Gawain Hightower starts pissing his pants, Criston Cole just laughs at him like, no, dude, we got this covered. Rhaenyra then comes back to Dragonstone, fresh from her little field trip to see Alicent, and they basically explain the circumstances for Rook's Rest, like why it wasn't Rhaenyra and Rhaenys instead. She wants to be the one to take Cyrax immediately, but they won't let her because she's too important for the war effort, which is correct. Like, you don't let your captain go on an away mission like this. Jace wants to be the one to go. She's like, oh, hell no. Look, probably because she doesn't want him to die, but also because his heir, and if something were to happen to him, then it would be really bad. And it winds up being Rhaenys who demands that she send her instead because she has the largest dragon that's active at the moment. Vermithor is much, much bigger, but nobody is currently riding him, so he's an inactive dragon. Then down in the Valyrian library, Rhaenyra tells Jace the prophecy of A Song of Ice and Fire, Aegon's prophecy, because he's her heir. We were all expecting this because there was a little bit of audio from this in the previous trailers. Basically, that there are White Walkers, the Long Night, the Night King, everything is coming, but they don't know when. So at any given moment, they could just march south of the wall and that'd be the end of them, and that's why they need to unite the realm. This will probably inform a lot of what Jace does going forward on the show. And I've talked about this in a couple previous videos, but the dragon skull that they're standing in front of when this is happening is Meraxes, and that's meant to foreshadow Meleys' death because of the events of Aegon's conquest, also because Meraxes was really critical during Aegon's conquest. So there's a lot of history going on in this shot here and a lot of foreshadowing for later in the episode. Notice how they cut together the shots of Aegon putting on Aegon the Conqueror's Valyrian armor and his crown, Aegon the Conqueror's crown, when they're doing this too. So there's a lot of Aegon the Conqueror stuff just in general happening in this moment. You do also clock that Aegon seems like he is super drunk when he hops on his dragon. Then we get the actual battle at Rook's Rest. Been waiting for actual dragon battles for so long now. You can clearly see how Staunton is vastly outmatched until Rhaenys and Meleys arrive, but that was part of the idea, is like they knew they would overpower them. They were just doing this because it was a trap. Rhaenys starts burning a giant chunk of the Green Army. Most of their army got killed, but enough were around to continue taking the actual castle after the dragons went down. So it wasn't clear, even though it seems like there was all this collateral damage, the Greens still won and took Rook's Rest. Notice how pissed Aemond is when Aegon shows up on Sunfyre, like, what an idiot. The reason why he waits to activate Vhagar is because he wants to let Rhaenys have it out with Aegon a little bit, in hoping that Aegon will be able to weaken her, making it easier for him to kill her. Love the look on Rhaenys' face when she sees Aegon, like she knows he has no chance because Meleys is so much bigger than Sunfyre and she's so much more experienced. He's just kind of an idiot just in general. You really do feel bad for him in this episode, like he kind of did this to himself, like he should not have gone, but you still feel kind of bad for him. Notice how when he falls the first time, not completely, he winds up causing a bunch of collateral damage. That happens a couple times in this battle during the episode where a bunch of the Greens are killed by either Vhagar or Sunfyre. Like they kill almost as many of their own army as Rhaenys did on Meleys. The dragons fighting is also meant to pay off those earlier quotes from different characters, particularly Rhaenys in last week's episode when she spoke to Rhaenyra about the horrors of what the war would turn into, especially once dragons entered the fight. It would turn into absolute carnage. The collateral damage from the dragons would be so great that you almost couldn't declare it a victory for either side no matter what happened. This will continue to be a big point. The whole idea is that at the beginning of this, Rhaenyra said that she didn't want to rule over the ashes of Westeros. Daenerys also said the same thing too before she burned King's Landing. So just remember, this is just the beginning of this war. Things will only continue to get worse in the realm. Everybody hoping that Rhaenyra does not also turn into the queen who burned them all. And speaking of the actual battle itself, like the actual engagement, the battle at Rook's Rest is what it's actually called within the context of A Song of Ice and Fire. The Maesters call it the battle at Rook's Rest. Was technically looked at as a victory for the Greens, but both sides lost so much, and that has been the main reason for Rhaenyra and Alys, and also Otto Hightower, for the most part, have been trying to avert an actual war between both sides. They didn't want something like this to happen. They kind of knew that this would probably happen. But Aegon just fired Otto Hightower, and it kind of bit him in the ass, almost literally. He hired the literal worst person imaginable as his new hand of the king, Criston Cole, and together they made some of the worst possible decisions you could make. So as bad as you feel for Aegon after this fight, like he's going to have it like this for the rest of his life, basically. This is all his fault for wanting this so badly and letting Criston Cole call the shots. We've been talking a lot about Helena's dragon dreams and how she tells the truth and gives these little prophecies through different episodes. This battle and what happened to Aegon is meant to pay off one of her dragon dreams that she spoke about during Season 1, Episode 6, where she talked about the last ring having no legs.
The last ring has no legs at all.
Basically, the idea now is that Aegon will not be able to walk again. Then Aemond and Vhagar enter the battle. Most of the dragon fighting actually looked really good, like the CG, the special effects, the visual effects all look pretty solid. Rhaenys clocks him, Aegon barely holding on for dear life. He's not really doing any fighting, like he's just trying to survive this. And this is where things get really interesting. A lot of people will be talking about this later because Aemond orders a Dracarys on both of them, burning Aegon and Sunfyre, knowing that they were in the path. Like, who cares about them, but we can kill Rhaenys, so we'll just fire on both of them. So it's like Aemond didn't really care that Aegon was going to get burned. They both wind up falling. Aegon is almost killed. Sunfyre also almost killed. We'll talk about them at the end of the episode too when we get to that part, because there's some really interesting twists also at the very end of the episode. But notice how Rhaenys turns around after she starts to escape, like she probably knows that she doesn't have a chance at killing Vhagar, but she still wants to try, and gets in a couple really good shots. But the problem is that Vhagar is so big. Then Aemond and Vhagar are able to catch her unawares using the cliff face to hide, killing Meleys, and it's the fall that kills Rhaenys. She wasn't killed in the air. So RIP, press F to pay respects. There's going to be a lot of consequences for this. But then things get even crazier. So there's an ending tag scene, Criston Cole witnessing the aftermath from his perspective too, like he's just kind of coming to, barely hearing things. Then he sees Aemond finding Aegon's body, the Valyrian dagger. Notice Aemond holding it is meant to foreshadow his eventual regency. Aegon is still alive, like I said, but burned to a crisp, like he is a hot dog here. He'll be incapacitated for a long time, and notice they make it seem like Aemond was about to kill Aegon pulling his sword until Criston Cole showed up and told him not to kill Aegon, like he seemed disappointed. When you really start to break it down too, they also want you to wonder if Vhagar had already had a good shot at soloing Meleys, and if it had just been the two of those dragons in the fight, Vhagar would have taken heavier damage, but likely would have still prevailed. That'll get into what Daemon was talking to Rhaenys about in earlier episodes. Don't worry, we'll address that too, because this is also meant to be the tragedy of that as well too, like her not going to King's Landing with Daemon to kill Vhagar before this happened. Everybody gonna leave this episode with a whole bunch of regrets. But even though during the episode they want to remind you that Vhagar is the most powerful dragon in Westeros, they also kind of want to show that Aemond isn't that experienced a fighter as someone like Rhaenys. So it's one of the reasons why she's able to fight two dragons at the same time for a little while, but it's still too much for her. There was a joke she had about this during Season 1, too. It's like Season 1, Episode 1 at the tournament when she jested that none of the younger generation, like sweet summer children here, knew nothing of real war because they all grew up in a time of peace under Jaehaerys after Maegor the Cruel had been overthrown. Like all these sweet summer children are just play acting at war, they don't know what real war is like. Now in present day, it's sort of an F around, find out kind of situation. Aegon just found out. But when you think back to Daemon's line in earlier episodes when Rhaenys didn't want to go to King's Landing to kill Vhagar, they actually, the two of them together, would have been able to kill Vhagar because both of them are so much more experienced on actual Dragonback compared to Aemond on Vhagar. So a lot of what happened in this episode was meant to show you the consequences, bad consequences, of all these earlier decisions on both sides of the equation here. And if you didn't realize, a lot of people have also pointed out one of the other tragedies of the episode is that because both Vhagar and Meleys had previous writers before these current ones, you have Rhaenyra's grandfather, Balon the Brave's dragon, who was Vhagar, killing his wife's former dragon, Alyssa Targaryen, who's Rhaenyra's grandmother, Daemon and Viserys' mother. She was Meleys' earlier writer. But one of the big things that happens when dragons bond with new writers is they take on personality aspects of the new writer or whoever their writer is at any given moment. So you have to imagine, as chaotic as Vhagar is, she's getting a lot of that from Aemond's mind. But to be fair, she is a really, really old, really grumpy grandma dragon. Next big tragedy of the battle is the fact that Aemond takes both the credit for killing Rhaenys and Meleys, but also the blame for nearly killing Aegon and Sunfyre. Sunfyre will be okay, but unable to fly because of the torn wing, but theoretically could heal, given a long, long time, but the Dance of the Dragons doesn't last that long, so effectively Sunfyre is out of the fighting for the rest of the war. Now they could cart him in and use him like a flightless dragon, still very powerful, but way weaker to technical ground fighting, and just not nearly as effective. Like, could we just cart him in and use him as a siege weapon now? But here's the thing, the way they played it in the episode, they also kind of want you to wonder if he let the fight go down this way on purpose, kind of, because of the wedge they've been driving between Aemond and Aegon this season, making it seem like they're really going after each other. When they were younger during Season 1, it was more about boys will be boys, teasing each other kind of thing. But in the recent episodes, they make it seem like Aegon and Aemond really, really hate each other. You remember Aemond baiting him during the small council meeting, basically telling him that he was a poor fighter, like, no, you shouldn't come, we need you to stay here, but not because you're king, because you suck at fighting. That was one of the reasons why when Aegon found him in the brothel later, he was so vicious, because he was trying to get him back for yelling at him in front of the small council. Also did not help that recently Larys Strong, Sir Footstuff, also made Aegon think that Aemond wanted to usurp him and take the Iron Throne from him. It just seems like there's a lot of things going on in the background that's pitting the two of them, Aegon versus Aemond, against each other. There's so much going on during the episode. If you spotted any other Easter eggs or references that I didn't mention in this video, write them below in the comments. My episode 5 trailer video will post next, and my full episode 5 video will post next Sunday. Some of the next big things we'll be talking about will be the aftermath of the battle, obviously, the deaths, what will happen next with Aegon, the Iron Throne, because he's incapacitated, he can't act as king. It would mean that the regency would fall to Aemond, who's next in line technically, because of blood and cheese. Even if Jaehaerys were alive and were old enough to sit the Iron Throne, he'd still be too young to actually rule, requiring a regent no matter what, which would then fall to Aemond. So either way, Aemond winds up temporarily on the Iron Throne. So if you've been wanting to see what Aemond would look like as the actual king instead of Aegon, this is the closest you'll get for now. It's also kind of meant to pay off that moment from Season 1, Episode 9, when they crowned Aegon. Aemond had that look on his face because earlier in the episode, they made it seem like it should be Aemond, like he kind of wanted it himself. And earlier, Aegon had said, "I don't want to be king, you can take it, you be king, not me." Cut to present day, now it's kind of going to be him for a little while. And because he caused Aegon's injuries, he is the reason why he is on the Iron Throne at the moment. Everybody click here for that episode 5 video. I'll update the link as soon as I post that, and click here for all my other House the Dragon videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.